For those of you who are doing the fake fly, the first thing we have to do is sew the fronts together. But we won't be sewing the entire seam, and I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. But remember, check your machine threading to make sure that it is stitching well before you start sewing on your project. All right, so looks good on both sides. I'm going to set this aside, and then we're going to take a look at where we're going to start sewing. So just like with the center back, let me pop out here a little bit. Just like with the center back, we are going to start at the point that is the leg seam, okay? And I'm going to just mention something here I should have probably said before. I've had kids before who sew this part right here, and then they come around. You don't want to do that, because what you'll end up doing is getting a skirt with a funky little point in the front. We're actually just sewing along the J. We're not doing anything to the legs right now. We actually have to pull these apart, and each one of these gets attached to a piece of the back. So we don't want to sew them together. It just means you have more ripping to do. Alrighty, so we are going to start at the center front, and we're going to back stitch at the beginning, and then we're only going to stitch until we get to this dot. And you need to make sure that you can see your dot really well. You know where you're heading. And although I'm not going to be able to see my 5/8 of an inch at this point, when I get here, I'm just going to shoot straight to my dot so that I can land on it and then backstitch. So let's start with that. Okay, hold on to your threads when you start. A few stitches forward. Don't forget to backstitch. And remember, going around this curve, you might want to go a little bit slower, just because it is a little more difficult. I'm going to speed up just for time's sake. Don't forget to take your pins out. And remember, this is where we could lift it a little bit and adjust it. Because we are set at needle down, we can do that and the needle won't move. Don't forget to don't sew over the pins. And again, if you notice, I'm using my hand and I'm moving a motion like this, which helps me turn that. I'm not pushing on it real hard, but just enough that'll give me that curve that I want. Okay, stop and flatten things out. Okay, so if you notice, I am right at the point where, about to the point where I can't see the side anymore. And I'm not going around this curve. I need to come up to this dot. So what I need to do is look at my needle, look at my dot, and I'm going to focus on the dot, and I'm going to shoot straight for it. Okay, and I'm going to land right on top of it. And you can go slow. Let me check. Yep, I'm right on top of it. Now I'm going to backstitch about 4 or 5 stitches, because we want that to stay secure. And needle up, presser foot up, pull off to the left, and cut my threads. All right, and I'm going to come back in here with my snips and get these nice and close. And I am about 1 stitch shy of my dot. That's okay. That's close enough. You should try to land right on top of the dot. Don't make it more than 1 stitch difference, because that could cause you some problems later on. All right, and I'm going to go back and cut these snip these threads off here too. Grab them. They're trying to get away from me. Okay, so I have a little bit more of the straight that I have to do, and I'm going to go up to the top. Remember, I'm not doing anything with the fly part right now. I'm going to come up to the dot, and I want to make sure that the dot is right underneath my needle, and I'm going to drop it right down there. And you're probably saying, Ms. Jones, there's a pin there. Well, I'm not going to start sewing yet. I just didn't want things to move around until I got the needle in the fabric. Okay, so I'm right on my dot. Now, I can't really see the 5/8 of an inch, but I only have to go about this far, and I can keep this straight, all right? And if you're really worried, you could draw a line from the dot to the top making sure that it's 5/8 of an inch over from here. If you're really worried, you could do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to start by doing about 3 stitches forward, and then I'm going to go 3 back. I don't want to go back more than 3 because that's where my dot is. Oh, I hit 4. I'm probably okay. All right, and I'm watching right here because my 5/8 of an inch is starting to pop up here. I can see where it is now. And then I'm going to just stitch straight up to the top. Okay, and back stitch a few stitches, stitch off the top, needle up, presser foot up, and pull off to the left. And go back and make sure that you cut those little dots, or those threads, I'm sorry, because we don't want any of that stuff hanging around. Okay, our next thing to do is the second line of stitching and the zigzagging, so we'll go on from there.